Well, welcome everyone to GOCA's virtual studio visit series, and I'm Daisy McGowan. I'm the director of GOCA, and today we are very lucky to have with us Dáreece Walker. And thank you so much for doing this, Dáreece.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for reaching out and thinking about me for this type of program.
Yeah, it was interesting because we were thinking about alumni, and you graduated from UCCS and are now coming to us out of New York City, which is great.
Yeah.
To connect with you out there. It's been really wonderful to follow your trajectory to grad school and then through your professional career, and just been really impressive to see everything you keep, just pushing it. It's really great. So it's exciting to catch up with you and the work. This is my favorite part of my job. I think like the year before last, I did about 200 studio visits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's like I just take it really seriously. It's also really fun. My partner and I, are both artists and curators, and we love when we travel, connecting with other artists. So it's just like it's like what we do for fun almost, but it's also like really important to my practice. Because if you're curating in contemporary art, you just pretty much have to like keep up, it's like.
Yeah, there's always, you never met all the artists, so you always got to constantly you got to keep looking. And even if the ones you meet, they have new stuff next week, so.
Right, yeah, which is a good thing. That's a good problem. But usually the studio visit in person is kind of an intimate thing. I mean, certainly it can be formal, and artists like, I know when you go through grad school, you learn all about, even in undergrad, I know you probably did a lot of training with that with the professors at UCCS.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can be a pretty intimate thing. You're sharing your work in process, and not necessarily something you like have a camera crew coming in and filming. So I really appreciate you being willing to put this on this virtual platform. It's been really wonderful too, though. I do prefer, traveling, and I definitely want to put a pin in visiting you in person in your studio. The next time will be in person. I got to hold on to that.
Gotta come to the big city.
Yeah. I usually travel to New York once a year. And twice would be great too. And we go to LA, Nashville, as well as Minneapolis is another really interesting little art city.
I haven't been to Minneapolis yet.
Yeah, the artists there really, there's a lot of public support for artists there, which is different than a lot of other states. So it's a lively experimental scene. Anyways, there's just a lot going on everywhere, but New York for sure is like the place where artists go. They're like, I want to take
Everybody passes through pretty much.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just so impressed with you. You worked really hard, as artists work really hard, but you particularly work extremely hard. And you really stretched and you made it happen. And so I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about that too for our students. What was that like for you? What's it like now? What does it mean to be an artist working in New York? And if someone's considering that for themselves after they graduate from undergrad or something like that.
Yeah.
So this series, we actually did the first round in the fall. Excuse me. I don't even know what day it is or season anymore. It was almost during this pandemic that came up, and we got.
Yeah, there's a weird little thing that shuffled everybody's schedule around.
Yeah. So actually starting in late March, kind of right away, I started reaching out to artists, and I thought, well, I got a little bit of cash, so we give a stipend, which I think is important to get money directly to artists. And to value your time and your labor, doing this. And then also...
I really appreciate that. I'd actually like to mention that. Like, you were one of the first art institutions that I, received a payment for showing at, and I just thought that was a really big deal at the time. So, and that was 7 years ago, probably. So
yeah, it was right when you graduated. We put you in the protest exhibition. I was trying to curate you into that. Some of your series with cardboard, books on cardboard, you were working on it. You've been working on those you've been speaking out about that with your art for a long time.
Yeah. It's pretty much never ended. It's a never ending story.
It's your lived experience, unfortunately, I'm sure, but that was always just such powerful work. But I believe equally, artists deserve respect, and they deserve support, and they deserve to be treated, with social equity. And so it's not a lot of money, but I feel like even a small amount. You know, it's about a matter of respect. So our whole GOCA organization, our board, we talk about that a lot because it's just something people aren't real educated about generally, you know. And artists get asked a lot to do things for free, and it's
all the time, every day.
Okay. It's not
you know, it's really it's encouraging, at least for artists, to know that there are situations where they could be paid for even like similar things, like a studio visit or an artist talk, you know.
Yeah, and you know, in the whole world of like the art world, we're an academic gallery, right? But we actually kind of had this weird. We certainly get support from the university for like our space, and our staff lines are paid, but otherwise we fundraise for everything. And I love telling that story, like, hey, we're bringing money to artists to help them realize new work or to support the creation of work, or just to say like we recognize this is real labor and we want to respect that. And so we talk about that a lot. But then also there might be small experimental gallery spaces that can't do that, you know. Like a big museum certainly should be doing that, and sometimes they don't, you know. And so that's what actually this came out of New York, the working artists for the greater economy, wage.
Wage artists. Actually, one of my professors in grad school, A.K. Burns, is affiliated with Wage as like one of their board members.
Oh yeah, I really respect that work they've done and taken the museums to task. And you know, museums have a hard boat right now, so you could even see it going further in the direction of like, well, if you want to have a show, you got to self-fund, but that immediately like knocks out anybody who doesn't have the funds to self-fund a major show, which is, you know, there's a lot of costs in that. Anyways, I could clearly go on, but I feel like we should talk about you and your art. So I'll stop talking for a minute and just invite you to introduce yourself, and if you could talk a little bit about where you're at physically, you know, and then just anything else you want to share, and then we can start talking a little more about the art too.
Yeah, well, you know, like you introed, I'm here in New York. Right now, I'm physically in Brooklyn, and I've pretty much been in Brooklyn for about 3 years. When I first moved to New York for graduate school, I lived uptown in Manhattan in Washington Heights, which is right above Harlem, pretty much. And
yeah, I came and visited out there.
Yeah, that's right. You know, so it's like that was a good time. Manhattan, all the little neighborhoods are so much different because of like immigration. There's so much old history here in New York that there's just certain areas where it's like a lot of different types of people and different cultures sort of making the communities thrive. And yeah, I guess to tell people, students and everyone watching, a little bit more about me. I started school at UCCS way back in 2008, 2007, 2008. 2007 is when I graduated high school. So I guess the next fall is when I started college. And I was a business major, actually, and an art minor. So I was kind of following in the old traditions of wanting to be an artist, but, you know, you seek advice as a young person and you ask, you know, about that, or just tell people like, oh, you want to be an artist? And they're like, oh, okay, well, you should be an art minor and go to school for something in case that doesn't work out.
Yeah, you hear that a lot.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I started undergraduate school, was in business school.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was weird. I mean, it was cool, actually. I mean, I learned so much in business that relates to art that I think a lot of artists actually don't get educated about. So I feel like I have a slight upper hand in the regard of going to business school for like 2-3 years. And but the transition is the weird part, I guess, for me, because in university, the business college is a separate college. So if I wanted to switch majors, I'm pretty much dropping out of school and trying to reapply into the University of Letters, Arts, and Sciences. And I had to like go to an office meeting and pretty much beg to like be allowed to stay in school and transfer over to be an art major. Because at the time when I decided I was completely over business, I like stopped going to class. I was just over it. Something happened and I was just like, all right, none of this matters anymore. All of this is so repetitive and boring. I'm not going to do this, but I know I'm going to be, you know, still pursuing my art career. So it was a little bit of a difficult time. That was my junior year in college. So I guess that would be 2010, 2011 year.
But you were kind of living somebody else's idea for your life, right? Somebody else you should do this. And it's like, you can take it a certain ways and then it just, there's nothing in there. It's just like a balloon that just.
Well, yeah, like it's so interesting because, you know, I wanted to be the best. I was really thinking about it like, all right, I want to be an artist. Like, how do you do that? How do you be the best at something? And it's like, well, you can't be a minor if you're, you know, or do it for little periods of time, you know, like you kind of have to invest your life and your energy a little bit more focused and dedicated to the thing you want to be like really good at and pursue a career in. Yeah. So for me, it was almost like, well, I feel like I'm wasting time now. I got to get over to the art side so I can put more of my time there. So like, I don't feel like I've missed out on, you know, being able to get that like 10,000 hours or whatever, you know, of trying to master an ability. So, so 2000.
Making art though, right? Through even when you were.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was constantly making work. So that's the thing about me as an artist and what like artists should understand. Even as an art student, when I was at UCCS in art class, I would make art that had nothing to do with art class. Mm-hmm. So like if we had assignments or whatever, sometimes I couldn't particularly figure out a way to make it like a work that stands on its own, that doesn't seem like academic in the structure of the assignment, but I would create the work for the assignment. But then in my spare time, I would be making art that I want to make and like trying to like, you know, really push the boundaries or try to experiment in the ways I wanted to. So I was making art for no credit, you know, while still making the art for class at the same time. So like that's a different way to think about it. Is like always have ideas and try to just like work them out. You know, it doesn't matter if someone's going to see it immediately or if it's for something specific. You should just be trying to work on, you know, yourself and your crafts and your ideas.
Yeah. And once that structure of school isn't there anymore, you know, you can like have that practice that you've developed your practice basically. Cause you almost as an artist want to have that be independent of some outward pressure. Like here's an assignment with the due date, you know, but it can be tough if you're only used to making art that way. So I always admired that about you. You had a lot of drive.
Yeah. I mean, I see a lot of artists. I mean, the due date thing happens to, I don't know, it motivates some artists. Like I know some artists who ended up getting like an annual solo show. So like, they're motivated by their solo show deadline, essentially. Mm-hmm. So like they might lull a little bit, but until they find out, oh, I have a date, and then boom, they're in production, you know? But that's for artists who get in the position to be able to do that. It's not an entry level, like beginning career artist that, you know, can sort of engage that way. A lot of those artists are like, you know, in their late 40s, 50s that are, you know, in a comfortable position to know that they're going to have a solo show. You know, it's not like they'll have it and they just will get around to when they actually want to work on things. But, you know.
Do you go from undergrad right to grad school?
No, so actually, after I graduated at UCCS, I took a year in between. And that year in between, actually, the summer that I was leaving was the Brilliant show that you had downtown, the live auction that I was in.
Oh, so, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah, that was like, yeah, definitely, you know, so that, yeah, supporting each other, you know, like trying to donate to the cause and also try to help the artist. That was really great because you were like kind of helping send me off to New York too at the same time.
Yeah.
But I lost my train of thought. I was
just asking if you took some time off between undergrad and grad school.
Yeah, and so honestly, within that year off, I was working part-time. So I graduated without a job, and I was basically trying to find, all right, what am I going to do? Like I was, wanting to apply to graduate school, but I didn't want to go immediately. I don't know why I was thinking that, but I think it was just the last year of school, I just wasn't motivated to like put together my applications, or maybe I thought like I didn't have the right images and stuff like that. So
you have all that pressure, the thesis show, and like it's just a lot. It can be a lot. I know a lot of students get just kind of burn out.
Yeah.
And also, you don't want to be like only applying to grad school with like your undergraduate projects. Although I know you didn't really work that way. You always had your own projects going on, which is why when I curated you into protest, that was work you made while you were an undergraduate, but it definitely wasn't class, maybe.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with class pretty much. I mean, in some ways, but it was just like, I just had to make it.
Sorry to interrupt you. You were making work at the level of a professional artist. And so, I curated you into that professional show. I guess if you look at, whether someone's a student artist, some people differentiate. I just look at, the quality of the work, and it was always at that really high caliber.
Well, I really thank you for that. That's like awesome, because like that was the first time being on the wall with another major artist like LaToya Ruby Frazier across the way. So that was really special. And I mean, that whole year between undergrad and graduate school, I was really just working on just figuring my art practice out. I mean, I kept working and kept like making things, but I was trying to figure out like what I really was trying to say in each project and try to come up with stronger work than I'd made in undergrad, because it felt like, all right, you can make your own pace now. You're not expected to show somebody something next week, so you can kind of figure it out. And throughout that year, I kept like having group shows. I was showing even in just random places, like fellow artists in Colorado Springs would do pop-up shows at like the Zodiac bar, and I would do a group show there. And I remember, I sold a work there, like an original work, just because somebody came and really loved what I made there. It was a cardboard work, so.
Oh yeah, and we have one of your works in our permanent collection at UCCS, a really great, important piece with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah.
Right, and that's pretty amazing. That's my first piece in the public collection. So, I mean, which is awesome, because like when you get the line on your resume that says like collections, you feel really good.
I bet you've grown into a lot of collections since then,
Yeah, a lot of private collections. I guess like 4 public collections now. So
awesome.
Yeah. I'm keeping the steam rolling. I'm trying to, climb up the hill.
It's a constant.
It's really about staying active, and that was like my motivation through that year. But I knew I did want to go to graduate school, so I basically was staying involved in the arts in my city. That's like almost mandatory for an artist. If you're not really aware of like things that are going on, it kind of seems like you're disengaged. Like it's really hard to make connections in the art world, because most people that have similar interests in the art world end up just seeing each other a lot.
Yeah.
Just like on accident. Like you just go to another opening, you might be gallery hopping, and you keep seeing the same person. And then, the next month of like openings, it's like, oh, you see them, but they're talking to somebody you know. So then you just say hi to the person and then you guys get introduced. It's kind of like that's how a lot of stuff works in New York and in other cities.
In Colorado Springs, yeah.
Yeah, actually, because that year, in between graduate school and undergrad, I had a solo show at the Modbo at SPQR. And that's because I went to a show and met Brett Andrus and was just talking to him about like, oh yeah, I'm an artist. I never really got around to the open calls, but you know, I'd love to show you my work. I've been curating a couple things. And he was like, oh, well, let me just see some work. And, you know, maybe we could talk. I don't know. But, you know, we always like to have artists in our open calls and stuff. So if you submit to the small work show, so that was just a conversation I started. And then it led to being in that small works group show and then a solo show before I left. So it's really about like being involved in your community as much as possible.
Yeah, very, very true. And so as you were talking about getting to grad school. So you ended up going to School of Visual Arts.
Yeah.
Did you major in painting or drawing or what was it?
So the School of Visual Arts has a master's program that's sort of, I guess, an open-ended fine arts curriculum. Okay. So it's sort of an interdisciplinary fine arts master's. It's just fine arts, M.F.A.
That's actually pretty great. So you're not
like,
go a single. Some of those older programs can be really stifling with those boundaries, I think.
Yeah, that's actually what kind of deterred me from applying to certain other schools. Mm-hmm. To be honest, like even Yale, although I may have liked to go there, I've just noticed, even in like their programming now, they are very specific about the categories, and it's hard for you as an artist, if you try to veer outside of the category, be embraced in that idea in certain like academic settings. So I didn't want to be stifled. I just wanted to be like free and, you know, still have a high level of engagement and like critical conversations, but not feel like, oh, we can't critique this because it's not the right medium, you know?
Did you feel like the faculty at UCCS, you know, prepared you pretty well? Like when you got to grad school for those critiques and all of that, like,
yeah, I mean, I had a lot of, it was interesting, just the amount of like art language just from fundamentals that like, you know, Corey Dryth would always like ram into everybody's head, make sure you know these fundamentals, you know, like the basic elements of art making, you know, like form and all that stuff. A lot of people, if they don't know that, don't know, they're like not educated on the choices they're making in their own artwork. Like they make things, but they don't know why it's being perceived away or how to incorporate something for it to be perceived in the way they want it to. And all of that really comes down to like those simple like aesthetic, like form, compositional things a lot of times. And I feel like I was really prepared just in my conversations with, you know, the professors at UCCS and in that regard, and also like critique in general, because they have a pretty good program with actually critiquing with like the group as a class and even individually with the professors. So that's kind of like the grad school format, just with a lot more critique involved.
Yeah, I'm curious then how you feel like, how has, you know, undergrad and grad school prepared you for being an artist now that you're out of it, you know?
Yeah, well, so that's so interesting. The art world is just really weird. It's like, it's hard to be.
Get ready, it's really weird.
Yeah, because like you said, you know, like everybody has their own path. So it's not like you can sort of like be prepared for a path that's never been made before.
Right. That's a really
so like I'm definitely prepared in terms of just being ready for opportunities. That's the biggest thing. It's like you got to be ready for opportunities. Like I have certain opportunities where, you know, if a curator emails you, it's probably because they saw something online or maybe somebody spoke to them about work. And when they want to like have an exhibition, you have to have like work for the show. You know, it's not like if they see something you've made and they really want to like have that as a body of work expressed, and maybe it's only a 2 or 3 person show, but you know, like you only made one of those or two, and your turnover is not very quick, so you probably couldn't even fill it in you know, like a half a year. If you got a year, you know, would you still be able to? That might stress somebody out, but like that's kind of part of the game if you're trying to survive with the making aspects, because you know, otherwise you can probably only have a solo show every like 5 or 10 years, you know.
Yeah, I like that model you talked about with older artists, maybe are more established, where it's like, oh, I get a solo show every year. You can't really count on that when you're starting out. So if you wait for that deadline opportunity to arrive, and the deadline might be like, hey, that's we need it in a month, you know.
Yeah.
Probably some of your works behind you take you much longer than that, you know. You've got some.
Well, sometimes, actually not anymore. I'm like so refined. The only time something takes longer than a month is if it's like life size or like bigger, like huge. It's gotta be bigger than me, because like my technique now.
To make a whole body of work in a month could be, or 2 weeks, let's say, if you got to get it framed, right? Or
oh boy,
that'd be like, you know, you can work day and night, but then it's a work like the best it could be. You know, what I hear you saying is you kind of have to dedicate to your practice, where you're always kind of making the work and always pushing it. And then when the opportunity comes, you're like ready. You're like, yeah, actually, I've been working on this series. I'm ready to show it.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of like anticipation a little bit.
It's interesting.
Because it's just hard to, honestly, it's really hard to understand just like the whole grant process and stuff when you're beginning as an artist. You don't understand. Like, I still didn't get it. I was like, so you mean like people just give you money for your ideas? Like, I don't know what that means. Like, you know, but it's not, they're not called contests. They're, you know, like grants or honorariums or fellowships, you know, and it's almost like anyone, like a lot of people do this naturally. They just don't know it's a proposal. You know, it's like them planning out what they want to do for a year in their studio is technically a proposal. You know, it's like, all right, I have these ideas. They involve, you know, these people who I want to engage with. I want to do this, this, and this, and then create this after that. That's a proposal that you could submit for money. You know, like
and that's something I want to highlight. You know, you made the big jump to New York. It had to be kind of pretty intimidating to do it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You grew up, you weren't born in Colorado Springs, I think, but you grew up there for most of your childhood, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But the one thing when you're talking about these grants, you know, they tend to be more in the art centers for artists. Where we are in Colorado, they really only give grants to institutions like my gallery. And then I'm expected to give it to the artist, which I think is really a problem. But it takes a lot more work. If you're like, oh, I trust this museum and I trust this gallery, you know, this nonprofit gallery, but then actually have to go through all the artist applications, that's more involved and it takes more work. So you tend to see those opportunities more in like art centers like New York and LA, Minneapolis actually. But so that's another reason to be in those places is like, it's not just there's more art and there's more galleries. It's also, there's actually more support for artists there, I think. Although obviously there's more artists, so then you've got the competition factor like you're talking about. But it's you really have that like kind of good understanding of, because artists, like when I talk to parents of students that want to major in art, you know, they're like, how do you make a living just selling your art? And I'll ask you directly, like, do you make a living just off selling your art, Dáreece? You know?
No, I do not.
You pay your bills.
That is not how I pay my bills.
Right, but you can get fellowships, you can get grants.
Yeah, I mean, I've made enough money. If I wanted to live poor right now, I could probably do that, but I might like eat once a day. You know, like I gotta like. I mean, I'm building up to that.
You have a day job, right? But it's actually in the art field. You're framing.
Yeah, I work in fine art custom framing, and that started at a small craft store in Michael's Arts and Crafts. That was part of my plan. When I graduated, that was my first job outside of undergraduate school. I got the job at Michael's Arts and Crafts, custom framing. And the only reason I did that is because I knew they were a corporate chain that probably had a location wherever I would go to graduate school. So I was thinking if I got into school, I could probably have a job no matter what, wherever I move, just being corporate transferred, and at least it's related to art. So that was what I did that year.
That was your training.
Yeah. So then I moved to New York and I get Michael's job here. But then I end up quitting the Michael's job because Michael's it's just, it's a lower level. It's a regular retail type of situation. But then I found a nicer job in Chelsea, New York, that's also in custom framing. So that seed I planted way back in Colorado Springs just after undergrad, where I hadn't even been accepted to a graduate school yet, allowed me to find a job in the arts in Chelsea, in New York,
Yeah, and now you're working with, from what you described, much, obviously, higher, I guess, like you said, you were working more retail at Michael's, but now you work with, you frame for gallery shows, basically.
Yeah. So
you're working with
big gallery shows, Carol Walker, Hank.
And you get that work. It's so amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, you see it right there in front of you, and it's amazing. All these artists, I get to see their work, just up close and personal. A lot different than the gallery. It's it's literally preparing it for the openings. So it's it's really, it's really informational too as an artist, seeing how just big galleries say Sycamore Jenkins and Lorraine Augustine and Hauser and Wirth and all these major institutions are working, because they're the leaders of the contemporary art world, and you kind of get to see how just the process involved with those artists and at that level. So I'm constantly just staying involved in the arts in a way, while still pushing myself in my career, because it's work that I made in graduate school here in New York. Two of the pieces that I made that weren't even in part of my thesis work are in a museum show now overseas at the Kunsthal Kade Museum in Amersfoort, the Netherlands.
Wow.
So, and a collector actually purchased those two works from me. So, literally right before the quarantine, I made my first major sale. And I guess a major sale is qualified as roughly 10,000, give or take.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Yeah. So it's like I said, I've been building up the cardboard piece that I mentioned I sold at the Zodiac in Colorado Springs was $250 or $300. I don't know,
Dáreece. The one thing that's really cool listening to you while you talk is I talk with our students a lot, because you worked for the gallery for GOCA when you were at UCCS, and a lot of
I did some crazy stuff too. The rain machine.
I will never forget that. You and I both went out there at separate times, obviously, and we had to get under the rain machine while it was raining and clear out those ducts.
Yeah.
That was not fun. I will say forever, I appreciate your dedication to the work.
It was a beautiful installation, though. It was a very beautiful experience.
Not every student would have been sure, I'll take that on. You were really
You want me to do what? Yeah.
That water was cold.
It was really cold, yeah.
But anyways, you did a lot of great work for us. And one thing when I talk with students, they really discount their experiences. I work with them on their CVs, getting ready for grad school or whatever else. And I have to point out, I'm okay, I have them when they work with the gallery, write out every single thing you did. And that's museum education. Okay, that's preparator. That's fabrication. That's artist assistant.
Yeah.
they don't see it. And then you talk about retail experience. Like, I do feel like everybody should work retail at some point in their life, you know, to get customers. But then you had those skills from framing, and people, you know, in the art world might be like, you know, Hauser and Wirth is not going to have their show framed at Michael's, right? But those are tangible skills you developed, and they're very valuable. And we work, you know, with our students on just helping them be aware, like, hey, just because this was like a retail job, like that could be customer service in a gallery museum or something like that. Or, you know how to work with the public, that's a skill. And then, but now what I hear you that it's really exciting is, I'm sure you learned a lot about the art world in grad school, but there's nothing quite like the learning actually being in that art world must impart. Like you learn so much about how it all works just from talking to other people, and you know, framing those whole shows, like that's amazing. But it's also got this whole other layer of education about how the art world works. But I just wanted to point that out for our students, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Like, one of the biggest things I learned in grad school is it's like, it doesn't get easy. It's more about like how many things you apply yourself to give you a better chance of landing one of those things.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that old saying, like you throw enough shit at a wall and something will stick. You know, it's like that's kind of like how we're getting our opportunities. Is like there's so many open calls of like or just like proposal ideas, or you know, like a lot of stuff's not going to land. You're going to get a lot of denials. Like I got like probably 6 denials in the last 2 months from just random art shows I've applied to. Like I've gotten over like seeing it and getting sad. It's just like, all right, I didn't make the cut this cycle. You know, that's okay. I'm still going to keep doing.
The more you do, the less it stings. I mean, it probably still stings, but it's less like, I'm not going to take this personally. I'm going to keep pushing, because you realize it's kind of part of it, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, sometimes you can take it personal if it is like seemingly personal, but that's not going to get you very far if you like, you know, it depends. It depends on what position you're in. Let's just say that some people can get away with that, but
yeah, it probably doesn't help to like trash talk every gallery you didn't get into in town or whatever.
Yeah, you know, if you haven't really like made an impact and you start like ragging on everyone in the community that sort of like has influence, it's probably going to be really hard for you to get, you know, an opportunity because that just kind of sheds light on your personality. That's one thing, is everybody's watching, even if you don't know. Like they might see you from afar and you'll never know. Like I've never had a conversation with Carrie James Marshall per se, but I had a solo show in Harlem, and the gallerist was there when I wasn't, just during gallery hours. Carrie James walked into the gallery. Yeah, so he's seen my work before, but like we've just never like interacted with each other. Like, so it's like a crazy thing, but you never know. Like, what could happen in 10 years? Like we might meet each other and talk, and like I'd be like, hey, you know, remember this thing? It's like, oh, you were that guy. You know, it might be a cool conversation like that.
Yeah.
But it's all about time, and like, so you just have to watch how you represent yourself in the art world, because people remember things too. You know, it's like
it's all a lot smaller, I think. I mean, it's obviously pretty vast. Like there's multiple art worlds, you know. But I also found going to the fairs and stuff pretty regularly, and traveling to New York and LA, like you said, you end up kind of seeing some of the same people. Even when you travel like that, you develop relationships, and people do remember. And for artists, I think that's so important, because a lot of the artists I show are based on recommendations from other artists, you know. And artists, for me, I really value artist opinions. I think curators might also. I definitely get recommendations from curators who I really value, and I follow that too. You know, I was really fortunate to produce that exhibition of Senga Nanguti's work.
Yeah.
That we traveled to like 5 different locations.
Legend. I see her work emulated a lot. Like,
yeah, I know, right?
The past couple of years, I've seen a lot of like Senga knockoffs, but
yeah, I know. Well, she's amazing, and yeah, I just visited her new studio in Colorado Springs, and it's this big space out on kind of on the east side of town, and well, really central. But but it's exciting, you know, when an artist has a new studio space. So maybe let's switch gears to talking about your work a little bit. I love talking to you about the, you know, the art world. It's really great to hear about your path. And then some of the work I see there, you know, is continuing some of those series that you're making, you know, when we had you in the protest show, which I think that was 2010 or 2011.
Yeah, I don't remember. Probably 2011 or 2012, one of those two.
I remember talking about Occupy Wall Street protests because we had just come through the 2008 crash, you know.
Yeah.
Now here we are in 2020, and it's like just all more, it feels like everything feels so much more intense, and your work has this intense relevance to the present moment. But I don't know how many people realize you have this deep history of really talking about, you know, about Black youth being murdered by police and the justice of that, and paying them tribute in this really powerful way. Like I see Breonna Taylor there, you know, behind you, and it's just a beautiful piece. And can you talk a little bit about what, you know, those are your works on cardboard. And then I also see now you have, is that oil painting or acrylic painting?
No, these are actually photographs mounted to cardboard, but there's charcoal drawing. The father figures have been cut out of the portrait and then redrawn.
Oh, wow. Okay. So,
so it's a new mixed media type that I'm working with.
So that cardboard coming through is actual cardboard material that we see. Yeah. So that, and that material, I know you, I remember you talking in undergrad about why you use, you know, cardboard, and it's interesting.
Yeah. It's so that's actually really interesting. So like, you know, some things that you do in undergrad carry forward, and you just keep building on it and expanding your understanding of your choices, and, you know, some things get reaffirmed and then some things fall to the wayside, but you just keep working on building a better language, really, artistic language. So this is like sort of like my artistic language is like my style and my content. And, you know, like you said, I sort of have a history of talking about this police brutality and just like discrimination against Black youth, because it stemmed from sort of an investigation of how I feel I'm being treated in society, or even just looked at, or, you know, engaged with. Just certain things make you wonder, like, like, why? What did I do to provoke that, or did I provoke anything? And a lot of it just comes down to the perception of a Black person in America, based on someone who's uneducated or has encountered very few Black people. So, you know, a lot of my work comes from a place of trying to communicate the pain and evoke a sense of empathy that relates to those types of brutal situations. And like you said, with this portrait of Breonna Taylor behind me, I really felt provoked to make it. I honestly wasn't going to make a piece about it, or like George Floyd. I didn't make a piece about George Floyd yet, and I may not. But the thing was, I don't like to feel like I'm capitalizing on moments that are, you know, painful, destructive. You know, like Black death. You know, Black pain and Black death shouldn't be like always capitalized on. So I'm not doing it as a way to, like, you know, sell or make money. You know, it's really more about like reiterating a sentiment, because I saw how much the United States sort of rallied behind the George Floyd protests, and all the protests started becoming George Floyd protests. And Breonna Taylor was murdered at the beginning of the quarantine in March. So like before, you know, we'd been sitting down and any sort of Black Lives Matter new disruption had started again. This had already occurred. So it's sort of like another thing about Black women, it's sort of an intersectionality involved. So I really felt like just as a Black male, I should stand up for a Black woman in this regard, and specifically make a work dedicated to that situation. So I'm sort of like referencing the material, using the material, like she's holding a sign that says she mattered. It's like a cardboard sign, but the whole thing's cardboard. So there's sort of like interesting ways I try to use the material. It's actually cut out because the cardboard's corrugated. So it has 2 layers of corrugation actually. So I can cut out a whole layer of the corrugation and it'll still be solid enough. So it has like a cutout sort of 3D element to it, almost like a relief.
So we can't see it from here, but if you got close up, you'd see that kind of corrugated, all kind of basically the negative space around the figures, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really try to incorporate texture and sort of, I've always been fascinated with making drawings somehow 3D, not like it's a 3-dimensional thing, but some element of texture or depth that's like involving the physical material itself. And that started at UCCS, really. So it's more about me just developing my ideas around it and how to incorporate it better in my new ideas.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about not wanting to capitalize on, you know, the trauma and the pain and the depiction. You know, I think if people didn't know your history with your work, they wouldn't realize, like, I mean, you were making this work out of your own experience, like you said, and of course, I'm sure, you know, that every artist makes work based out of their own experience. But you were quite young, and I'm sure growing up in Colorado Springs, it's like maybe 8% of the population is Black in Colorado Springs, and a lot of that's the military, so they're kind of like isolated away from the main part of, like, where you went to high school was probably mostly white, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
It's a mostly white, it's a pretty white community. I mean, Colorado as a whole, but parts of Colorado Springs in particular, and nobody was really paying attention to it back then, you know? Like, I remember when you...
Yeah, it seemed, honestly, Colorado Springs is pretty segregated in a way. Nobody really, I guess, acknowledges it because it's like, oh, that's the south side of the Springs, and this is Briargate, you know, like, or I guess Interquest Parkway or whatever. They start, you know, like moving further north and like doing things. So like Powers, now that it's like developed, has kind of become a new bridge where it seems like everything's mixed together.
Yeah.
But that used to be the line. It used to be like past that area in Powers was like mostly Black people, or just like not. Those were like the lower class, just like school districts. Like even the best school districts were on the north side of the Colorado Springs, and I think still are in terms of tax revenue. So like they get the newest technology and everything like that.
Yeah. The unjust system to base schools on like tax revenues, it like clearly sets, you know, some students up to have more resources than others just based on their zip code. And
yeah, I went to a high school with an Olympic regulation size pool.
Were you
so like I learned how to swim there because it was part of our gym class. Wow. I guarantee you most like high schools don't have that situation. So
yeah, but then yeah, that's interesting thinking about Colorado Springs. And then also, like, I think when I've shown work in the galleries, you know, that reflects, you know, the lived experience for folks in the community that don't get to see themselves very much reflected, you know, or represented, it's really powerful. But you were really in the vanguard talking about this problem. Obviously, many people were talking about it for a long time, but as far as like this collective movement happening, you know, with Black Lives Matter, and then now, you know, more recently, so I'm sure, you know, your work's in demand, but it's like coming from this place of personal experience too, and so I can imagine sometimes I heard you saying, like, I don't necessarily have to make a work for every one, you know, every instance of injustice that happens to be like, you know, really a big deal in the mainstream media or something like that. because I can imagine for you as an artist, like that's a heavy toll to like,
Mm-hmm.
it's,
Well, you have to do like supplemental research, you have to like look at images. Sometimes it's like the mortality photos that you just like come across in the whole search and stuff. So like you're dealing with a lot of like painful imagery, just trying to like educate yourself before you put yourself in a position of, trying to make a memorial piece or something to honor and respect the situation. So
yeah, right. That's probably the irony, is that in researching their life, you end up with all this images and video of their death, and that's like just traumatic, I'm sure. And for an artist, I saw you before this in person in Colorado Springs, and you gave a talk at the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center.
Yeah.
And you had a really powerful show with Floyd Tunson and with Basil Kincaid there. And I can't remember the name of the show, but
yeah, that show is called Force Resistance.
Force Resistance. I thought
Basil actually wasn't in the show, but he was.
He was just there talking. That's right.
Yeah, but he was doing like programming with CC because he was a former student of CC. So he was doing some like guest lectures and bringing their art students from CC to the artist talk. So he happened to just be in Colorado. He's is from St. Louis. So he just happened to be there at the same time as my show.
Yeah, you're right. He wasn't in that show. Basil was a student when I graduated from Colorado College, and I worked there for a little while right after I graduated, and he was one of the students I remembered, and I've stayed in touch with him. I guess I just remember his comment then. He asked a question at the talk, and it was you and Floyd. You and Floyd you each basically had a solo show, but they were in dialogue with each other, right?
Right. Yeah. So I had like a full space. He had a full space, but it was around, a central conversation. And Basil had, made several comments, to be honest, but like, one of the more poignant statements was about being a Black artist and like, it being painful at times to create the work, and that like, like that we don't do this, like for nothing. It's not like for like it's coming from a real place.
Yeah. I think he said something to the effect of it's not done for your entertainment or your consumption.
Yeah, it's not done for your. Yeah, he said something like that.
Yeah, and that's powerful.
I really love that.
I really appreciated that he spoke up about that. And I think, when you make really, really personal work, it takes a lot to get it out of there. So I want to recognize that with your work, and but do you want to talk about the other series, the Black Fathers series?
So Black Fathers Matter, that's a series I've been working on for a year now. And it's comprised of me walking around New York and, even New Jersey and just other places I've been in the past year, but just kind of casually noticing my surroundings and seeing Black male like role models with their kids, and just the interaction, just an everyday simple interaction that seems to just not be portrayed very often, at least from what I see. These are like images that I didn't get to grow up just like seeing, or I like always yearned for some side of like normal imagery in just media, be it advertising or television or movies, because a lot of like what you see in like your own family settings or stuff, you never actually get to see outside. You don't. So it's like representation of you. It almost feels like it's lying to everyone who doesn't know anything about you. So it's almost like an investigation of just the Black male representation. But also, I am an only child to a single mother, so my my upbringing, my dad wasn't around, so I only maybe saw him a couple times here and there. It'd be like once a year, maybe 3 times at the most. So I didn't really know him, and that allowed me to sort of like grow up looking at other men, sort of seeing what they're like, what makes them masculine, like what do I think is valuable in their representation, how do they carry themselves respectably. So it was almost like revisiting that as a little kid, being a voyeur of Black men being leaders. So it was like those two things happening at once. But then even more so, like, there's so many little things involved. Just like my dad not being there being one thing in the Black male representation, but that being a stereotype in the Black community where the father is gone. That's a myth. It's a widely it's definitely happened a lot, but it's not true that to say that Black men aren't in the households, you know, with
probably more than any other cultural group, right? Like, yeah,
there's actually been a study, I think it came out last year or this year, about Black male fathers actually spending more physical direct contact with their kids in their daily life than any other cultural group in America. So I just thought that was an interesting fact when the stereotype seems to be so dominant and seemingly upheld a lot, you know?
Yeah, and the word stereotype, like, I feel like people hear that and they're like, oh, I'm so used to hearing the word stereotype. But really, like, think about, like, growing up and the media and, like, what's being represented to you is just, like, this bullshit line that is, like, really derogatory, basically. It's, like, over and over and over and over. And so to, like, pull yourself up within that and be like, you know, I'm going to question all of this and make work about it. That seems really powerful. So what's the process with these? Is that, you said photograph?
Because there's I have like 3 different sets of work under the body of Black Fathers Matter. So like these photography incorporated pieces are series 2. The first series, I only used the photographs as reference images, and they didn't include like the urban environment in the natural background aesthetics, because I was more focusing on the figures themselves and trying to celebrate them for the moment that they were creating. But then as I developed that part in that series, I started to think about how the environment has a lot of information that also informs the viewer in a way that tells a lot about, like, just why I'm celebrating them and their power and passion for what they're doing, and the courage is sort of like relating the environment to cardboard in a way where that's why it comes out, is it's sort of like a torn environment. It's a little bit detritus, or like almost in shambles. It's rocky, you know, or a little rough around the edges, you know, as a light way to put it. So that's sort of like the backdrop for growing up, or just being a Black male trying to raise a family. So that's kind of why I wanted to make sure I used the photographs, even though I'm not by trade a photographer. So it was really interesting attacking that project with photography in mind. But I stayed true to my drawing roots. I had to have drawing, even though I knew like the photographs themselves were good, but I still was like, I have to draw. So
do you feel like when you draw the figure, I heard you talking about sort of devotional or memorial, you know, like, is there something in that, you know, the lengthy process of rendering that figure, but by hand, that is really important to you with you know, because I see it's the central father figure that you rendered, right?
Yeah.
It's Breonna Taylor there, or with your other series, the sort of, you know, the figures that you get that too.
Yeah, I think it's about, it's like paying my respects. It's sort of like, well, I was watching an episode of Pose. I don't know if anybody's watched Pose. It's an amazing show. It's about ballroom culture and just discrimination and that light.
Ballroom dancing?
No, not ballroom dancing. Trans ball culture.
Oh, ball culture. Yep, got it.
Yeah, so like all the just the style icons of the 70s and 80s that created trans just aesthetics, like trans men and women created shimmering eyeshadow. Like they're the first ones that put glitter in eyeshadow. Because there was no such thing. Real glitter was always made out of metal flakes. So they just used the shiny metal flakes in their makeup, but it was dangerous. So like they would like cut their eyes or something like that just for ball. But then that became such an aesthetic of beauty that, corporations took that from their culture. So there's a lot of things about like, the disenfranchised that like make everyone's lives better, but then like nobody ever really knows where it came from.
They don't give them the credit, yeah.
Yeah. But back to our point, there was this moment in Pose where one of the spoiler alert, one of the characters passes away, and basically they wanted to make sure that she looked the way she would have wanted to inside her casket. So it's like, when somebody dies and they go to a funeral home, they typically arrange them for the open casket. And when I got there, it was like this weird, like very generic, like they would never dress themselves like that. So they looked at them, and that's almost like when I'm drawing someone, I sometimes think of that moment where it's like, we have to dress them up like the best way that, so they go out with a bang and everyone knows like, they're beautiful, they're who they were, they're, kind of glowing and shining in their last moments rather than, being very like raw and gritty and realistic about it and like letting it like, oh, this is a dead body, like, or it's like we want to make sure there's respect in the moment. So it's like the drawing aspect for me is like taking off that makeup and reapplying it so it's perfect, because they didn't do a good job. It's like I don't see an image reflecting the respect that I feel like I could articulate through an artwork just yet. So I'd like to add my piece of that, just to the conversation. Because I like to think of my work existing in the continuum of art history and like the context of all the other art that's being made, not just like where I'm making my work compared to, what I did last year. That's always in my mind, but, I'm thinking about how, Picasso and Van Gogh have cardboard works, where does this fit in with that, kind of thing. I think about all kinds of stuff. So it's not just about these small little things. It's very complicated.
Yeah, you take the work really seriously and you give it a high level of respect. And I think it really shows. It's interesting seeing this series number 2 from this series, because I did see those earlier ones as well and been following those, and I can see the changes you made are really thoughtful, and the evolution of it, I guess, is maybe a way to say it. Those first ones were too. And there's so much we could dig into with your work, the religious iconography, like all these elements.
Yeah, I didn't even get into that.
I looked at the time and we're like over an hour already.
Yeah, I was like, I just looked too, like, oh wow, we've been going for a little while.
Yeah, well, it's just wonderful to talk to you about your work, and so I will wrap up here, but I really want to encourage people to dive into your website. You've got a lot on there. Your Instagram feed has really got a lot of work on there. And I see you've got a t-shirt. That's one thing I always really admire.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I had an online exhibition recently with actually a company that I help, I collaborate as a editor for. So this was a print of this piece behind me.
That's great.
And this piece is called Future of America. So it actually has the text underneath it that says Future of America on your shirt. And then like a gallery, like the wall text, that's actually on the back of my shirt. So like it has a signature. It says like charcoal, and all of that stuff on my back.
That's really cool. So that was kind of their response to doing the show online because of the closures and everything?
Well, it was so funny. my platform is like an online thing. So we were actually really wanting to incorporate art. We just wanted to do an art show, and I was going to be first anyway. It just happened that right when this happened, we had been talking about an online show like a month before it. So we were like, all right, well, let's get it together. Yeah. So it happened to roll out like right May, I think was when we opened. So my first says April, but yeah, May was when I did the digital show.
Because you've always, like, I remember, is it Living Life Fearless?
Yeah, Living Life Fearless. That's where this is up at. It may be down by time this is up, but I am curating a group show of 10 female artists on Living Life Fearless. So that show will be up, and it's called All of the Above. And Sarah McDarry is actually in the show. So.
Oh yeah, your partner. That's awesome. Yeah, I know. We're really excited to also include Sarah in this series. You're both making just really powerful work, and I love that, you know, we highlight both of you because you both graduated from UCCS, but you each have very, you know, you have your own practices, obviously, very different from each other. So that's cool to hear how you work together as well. I'm sure you support each other a lot in many, many different ways, you know, both by making that effort to be an artist in New York. But Dáreece, it's so good to get to see the work and talk to you about it. I feel like I said we could keep going for like 3 more hours about it.
Definitely.
So I do hope people will look up all those resources. We'll share some images of your work and those links when we share this studio visit out with our fall. This is our fall series, is what I was trying to say early on.
Right. Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun. I'm glad we got to connect, and I look forward to, you know, us working together again sometime in the future, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be great to bring your art back out to Colorado as well, and then to visit you out in New York. And I got to stay with that belief we're going to be able to easily do that again sometime in the future. But for now, I'm grateful to get to share your work out on this virtual platform. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.